Well, it's starting to happen. With Russian air defense being steadily degraded, we now have Ukrainian drones flying deep into Russian territory every single day, hitting planes, helicopters, ships, command posts, and more. Also, have you seen the story about the UN vehicle that was attacked by drones in Kherson? Russia bragged about it, explained this is why we hit that UN vehicle. It's hard to believe, but we're going to get into that in the back half of today's video. Now, starting out with these deep strikes carried out by Ukraine, we've been talking about this for a while. We are now seeing it come to fruition. Ukraine took out so many of the Russian air defense assets that a number of high-value targets have made themselves available across occupied Ukraine and inside of Russia itself. Just last night, the Ukrainian Unmanned Systems Forces say they carried out 55 strikes on 23 different military targets. They say among the targets that were hit was a BE-200 and a Ka-27 BE-200 aircraft and a Ka-27 helicopter armed with a torpedo at the Morskoye airfield in Russia, a Tor M2 air defense system in Luhansk, a Pantsir S-1 air defense system in Crimea, a dry cargo ship in Berdansk, a command post in Zaporizhia, and then another airfield in Luhansk. To give you an idea of what has set the stage for these strikes that we are seeing every single day now, and that's unusual, okay? It is not normal to be seeing effective strikes in Crimea, across Luhansk and Donetsk, and inside of Russia every single day like we have now for a couple weeks. The reason that is possible is because of the gaps created by striking the Russian air defense assets. The Unmanned Systems Forces said that since in the period December to May, they have destroyed 108 Russian air defense systems, 39 radars, and 6 electronic warfare systems. Those are massive gaps that are showing up in Russia's defensive posture. And, this is one of those things where you take out one air defense asset, it creates an opening that can be exploited. So one is a problem. 5, 10, 20 becomes a major issue, especially in a concentrated area. When you're talking about more than 100 in a 6-month period of time, to be blunt, Russia cannot backfill that need. What we are seeing, and we will continue to see for some time, is Russia now has to prioritize where these air defense assets go. Do they go to the airfield in Crimea, or do they go to the command post in Luhansk? Do they go to the oil field in Belgorod, or do they go to the Kremlin for the Victory Day parade? There is a limited number of air defense. Ukraine has far more drones than Russia has air defense, so every one of those that gets taken out just opens up more targets for Ukraine to go after. And this isn't just me noticing this, right? We've got the Russians as well starting to notice, hey, this is trending in the wrong direction. Their Mail Blogger Military Informant said, quote, as can be seen, the geography of strikes by Ukrainian guided drones continues to expand, as do the types of targets being hit. If earlier the enemy primarily focused on destroying air defense systems in Crimea, now neighboring regions with different targets are increasingly being added to the list. This is major in so many different ways. This is the suppression of enemy air defense, the destruction of enemy air defense. We're used to this in a conventional war. It's like what the United States and Israel carried out in the opening days of the war in Iran, and it's fast and it's violent and it's overwhelming and it's over in the span of 24, 48, 72 hours. That's kind of how we plan things in large-scale combat operations. That was not an option for Ukraine. They didn't have that ability. So it's been very slow, very steady. And we can go back over a year at this point where it was like, oh, wow, Ukraine just took out 2 more air defense systems in Crimea. Oh, wow, another Tor was just destroyed in Luhansk. And that just builds and builds and builds to the point where we are here today, and it is every single day there are significant strikes being carried out inside of Russia. This is a problem for them to continue the war effort as is. It's not just the overt military targets of helicopters on the airfield, which I guess we got some Russians complaining. There were supposed to be hard shelters. These were supposed to be protected like 6 months ago, and very clearly from that helicopter and plane getting hit, there are not, at least not in all airfields. But it's not just those overt military targets, it's economic targets as well. I don't know the last time that a Russian oil refinery wasn't on fire. Add another one to the list today. Just last night, the Ukrainian Unmanned Systems Forces say they struck one of the largest oil refineries in Russia, hitting the Ryazan oil refinery owned by the Rosneft company. They say the plant is among the top 5 largest oil refinery enterprises in the country. Its design capacity is 17.1 million tons of oil per year. They say on average, the plant produces around 840,000 tons of aviation kerosene annually, which is used in particular by the Russian aerospace forces. As a result of the deep strike, explosions occurred and a large-scale fire broke out on the enterprise's territory. Detailed consequences of the strike are being clarified. We have an idea as to what happened here because, oh my God, the entire thing was on fire. Once again, this is what happens when high explosive drones hit oil refineries. They burn. On top of that, we've seen, once again, it raining oil, this time in Ryazan. I think Tuops, it did that previously. This has become a relatively common occurrence. There's been a state of emergency declared in Ryazan due to these Ukrainian strikes. In fact, Russian mill blogger Swadkey, talking about this, said nearly 400 Ukrainian drones were shot down over 18 different regions of Russia last night. That is a huge number. So every single one of these drones, now you don't want a drone to be shot down. You want the drone or munition to make its way through to find a target and to effectively detonate on said target. But even when they're shot down, there's something to be gained from that. And what we're seeing with these large numbers of Ukrainian drones is every single one is able to identify where the Russian air defense assets are, what assets are where, how capable they are, where they're overlapped, where there's a gap. And every time one of those systems is knocked out, they can test it again and say, wait a minute, at a certain altitude in this direction, we can sneak right through and strike deep inside of Russian territory. Every single one of those 393 UAVs shot down last night, every one of those comes with massive data points that Ukraine is able to iterate on for the next wave of strikes. Not just Ukraine. That is something Russia is doing as well, which has led to some very deadly strikes in recent days. And we'll get to that more here in a second. Now, Swaki, talking about the strikes in Russia last night, he said a mass of UAVs attacked Ryazan and the Ryazan refinery. During the attack, 2 multi-story residential buildings were damaged and there were casualties, and 7 people were hospitalized and residents were evacuated. He said the 2 multi-story residential buildings were damaged. UAV debris also fell on the territory of one of the industrial enterprises. He said 4 people were killed and 12 injured, including children. All victims were promptly provided with the necessary assistance. The damaged structures are being dismantled. Now, speaking of civilian casualties, which are always to be avoided at all costs, we have a bit of an update on the Russian strikes into Kyiv from a couple days ago. If you recall, 1,600 munitions fired by Russia into Ukraine over the course of 2 days. A couple of those, at least, appear to have struck a residential building in Kyiv, and we know now that that killed 24 total people. Ukrainian President Zelensky, updating the information earlier today, said, quote, the search and rescue operation at the site of the Russian strike on a residential building in Kyiv has concluded. Our rescuers from the State Emergency Service of Ukraine worked nonstop for over a day. The Russians practically demolished an entire apartment building with their missile. 24 people were killed in this attack, including 3 children, and 48 were injured. He said such a Russia can never be normalized, a Russia that deliberately destroys lives and hopes to go unpunished. We need to keep the pressure on. It is Ukraine that is defending Europe and the world so that such attacks where children are killed do not spread further. I am grateful to everyone who did not remain silent and condemned this brutal attack. Again, that was, I think, the largest, most significant 2-day attack carried out by Russia inside Ukraine since the war began. And we can see the effects of that with 24 people killed and 48 injured. Now, another kind of crazy event here that played out in the last 24 hours to kind of give you an idea of how Russia is waging this war is they struck a UN vehicle and then bragged about it, released the footage and said, yeah, of course we did that. So to start out, this was a couple different sources here. We've got the I Want to Live Project sums it up well, where they said, quote, seriously, how evil and utterly stupid do you have to be to attack UN vehicles and independently publish videos of the strikes on your own channels? In fact, we do have a clip from the United Nations talking about this. We'll play that real quick. And a frustrating component here is that they seem confused as to who carried out the strike. And we'll provide a little more detail here in a second. But here's the United Nations talking about this strike.
Today we were planning a mission in Kherson. We were going to deliver some humanitarian assistance in an area called Ostrov, an area that has not been served for many months. As usual, we plan carefully our missions. We are very concerned about security given the constant conflict. We have notified the military, both the Ukrainian and the Russian side. But unfortunately, immediately after passing the bridge, entering Ostrov, a drone hit one of our cars. Luckily, nobody was hurt. We could go to the place where we were supposed to go, deliver the assistance, and then while we were doing that, a second drone attack, again, one of our cars. We have been then evacuated, thanks to the support of the local authorities. I don't know who did the attack. What I know is that we were accompanied by the local authorities to deliver assistance, humanitarian assistance to people. And what I know is that civilians and humanitarians should not be a target. This constant attack on civilians and on humanitarians is simply unacceptable. And member states of the United Nations should respect the role and the flag of the United Nations.
So then turning over to some Russian Telegram channels where they shared this footage. And remember, in this area down in Kherson, there's the human safari. This is where Russian drone units have been training and conducting practice for when they get sent to hotter sectors at the front. The river there allows for some standoff. And they have, I mean, again, according to the I Want to Live project, in just 2024, 2025, in Kherson, 712 civilians were killed. 4,175 injured by Russian drone strikes. In addition, 480 employees of the State Emergency Service and medics and volunteers were injured. I mean, they are deliberately, it's not new. We've seen this over and over again, where they're deliberately targeting medical evacuation vehicles, deliberately targeting fire trucks. In multiple cases, you see just a civilian. There was a clip, I'll see if I can find it, a clip a couple days ago where a mother and her child were just walking down the street and they had to take shelter because there were Russian drones flying overhead, just hunting people. All right, that's what's happening in Kherson. So unfortunately, it's not surprising that Russia carried out this attack, then released the footage. And what they said in their announcement here is they said this was a dual-use vehicle. It's an up-armored United Nations vehicle, and they said Ukraine regularly uses those to transport soldiers and equipment to and from the front lines. I think that might be news to the United Nations. So Russia claiming that is a viable military target, and it was operated in an area of Kherson, a populated city, but operating in an area of Kherson that they just had free fire range. So that's Russia. They're bragging about striking a UN vehicle, not trying to cover it up, not trying to blame someone else. They're saying, yeah, we did that, and we think that it was being used by enemy forces. Again, probably a bit of news to the United Nations members there, especially the ones in that video that talked about the strike taking place. They'd probably be pretty shocked to find out that there were Ukrainian soldiers in their vehicle or military equipment as they continued on their humanitarian mission. But another reminder, we've got a collaboration going on with Car for Ukraine right now for some new t-shirts and sweatshirts. We added the sweatshirt in recent days. A reminder, so we're running this through my merch store, but as a reminder, 100% of profits go to Car for Ukraine. We've almost sold 100 at this point, which is wild, but the whole backstory here is we've got a years-long campaign with Car for Ukraine because they're awesome and we're helping out the 104th Territorial Defense Brigade. They have some shirts and some designs that are really cool, but they don't sell them. So we teamed up for my store to kind of market it, and then we do all the back-end logistics, customer service, and all of that. And then 100% of the proceeds go to Cars for Ukraine. So it's their design. We're just hosting it. I feel like it's a pretty good team effort on that one. But again, for those interested, that link as well as the fundraiser will be linked in the description below. But that's all we got for now. Thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all next time.